What's up, you guys? My name is Marina. So today we're going to be talking about what books I read in the month of May. I didn't end up reading nearly as many books as I wanted to. I wanted to read a lot of books, but I only ended up reading 4, but 2 of them were 3 stars and 2 of them were 4 stars. So it was an okay reading month, just not what I'd hoped for. So let's just jump right into the books I read. So the first and only book that I ended up physically reading this month was The Virgin Suicides. I listened to this a little bit on audiobook when I was driving or mowing the lawn, but for the most part I did physically read this and I really enjoyed it. It's kind of like a sleepy story that's very character driven, kind of deals with this family where all the daughters commit suicide in different ways, and it's basically told from the perspective of a group of neighborhood boys, and they kind of wonder as they're adults about what happened when they were kids and kind of why all these daughters wanted to commit suicides, and just kind of like a look into the family. I found it really interesting. I remember loving the movie whenever that came out, but I went into the book not remembering anything about the movie other than I remember really enjoying it, even though it's kind of like dark and gruesome. I think this is one of those books that I really want to sit with and reread at a later time too, because just being more familiar with the story and kind of knowing how everything all plays out, it'll make it a little bit more interesting to reread it or maybe even to watch the movie. But I did give this 4 stars. I liked it way more than I thought I was going to. And I definitely can't wait to check out more stuff from this author. I own Middlesex somewhere. I think it's down there. And I haven't read that yet either, but I'm definitely looking forward to it after finishing this. The first book that I ended up listening to an audiobook this month was The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This is the last Riley Sager book I had to read up until his new book that's being published I believe in July. And unfortunately this was actually my least favorite of all of his books. It takes place at a summer camp where a whole bunch of cabin mates go missing, and basically they close the camp, reopen it, and then more people end up going missing. There's a lot of other things that happen and stuff that's a very basic premise of it, but I just didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. The mystery and stuff was really interesting, and I don't want to spoil anything. I found that part of it really interesting, but leading up to it, it just wasn't enough to keep my attention, if that made sense. I found my mind wandering a lot when I was listening to the audiobook, and I just didn't care necessarily about these characters or what was going on. I was just kind of wanting to know what actually had happened, so I could have read a summary or watched a book review and been just fine not actually reading this book. I mean, I did enjoy it, but I wouldn't reread it, and I don't necessarily think that I would recommend this. If you're looking to start on Riley Sager, this isn't the book that I would recommend the most. It just didn't have enough impact for me. So the next book I ended up listening to was Undercover Bromance by Lisa K. Adams. This is the sequel to the Bromance Book Club, which I really enjoyed. I think I read that in April, if I'm remembering correctly. Loved that book. I gave it 5 stars. This one I didn't enjoy nearly as much. I ended up only giving it 3 stars. I just felt not as connected to the characters and the romance, because the first book you dealt with the romance that the couple had already been together and they were trying to fix their marriage. This one is a brand new couple that kind of comes together, and I just found both of the characters not as likable as the one in the first book, and I just didn't necessarily feel as connected to the romance. I didn't really care about the outcome of it, to be honest. I don't really remember how the book ended, because it was just not as memorable for me as the first book. So I definitely think I'll be reading the next book in this series, but I'm hoping that one kind of picks up a little bit more, because I really enjoyed the first one, but this one was just kind of a letdown for me. And then the last book I ended up reading was Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This I absolutely adored. I gave it 4 stars, and I feel like if I reread it, I would give it 5 stars, because I just feel like I could kind of grasp what was going on in the book a little bit more if I was to reread it, which I probably will maybe next year, because I did really enjoy this book. But it's very hit or miss on book 2. People either love this book or they hate it. It's very graphic, it's very gory, and it's very much straight up body horror, which some people really don't like. But I don't know, there's something about it, I just find it really interesting. I don't think I have it next to me, but it was the Pure Trilogy by Juliana Baggett, I think that's her name. And that is very much also kind of gruesome and body horror, where it's a dystopian novel and a big bomb goes off, and if you are touching any items during that, you fuse to that item. So there's a guy that has a car fan in his neck. There's a girl that has a doll fused to her hand. There's a guy that has birds fused to his back, and his bird wings will move and stuff. That was pretty gruesome. This kind of was in the same vein, where there's a lot of physical deformities going on, people just having these really weird, strange health symptoms. I know some people don't like to read that kind of stuff when we're living in if it hits like too close to home or too close to the truth. So right now we're obviously in like a global pandemic. It's kind of really scary, but I tend to be more interested in that kind of stuff when it is like real life, if that makes sense. So obviously we're not dealing with anything like that, but I just found it more interesting, and I didn't really shy away from it, although I know a lot of people would not want to read a book like that during this time. But I just loved the friendships of these characters. Like, that was such a strong part of it, was how these girls would do anything for their friends, and kind of the mystery surrounding what was going on and stuff. It was one of those like YA novels that could have been turned into a series, but I really, really respected that it was only a single book, because you could have done so much more with this world and so much more with these characters and stuff, but I really respect the author's choice to do only a standalone novel. Yeah, I absolutely love this book. If you are not that like queasy and aren't that like freaked out by like real world situations and stuff, like with having a global pandemic, I really recommend this book. I don't even know how I can put into words how it just like connected to me. I don't know. I just love this book. Highly recommend it. So those were the 4 books I ended up actually reading in May. And then I just wanted to touch base really quickly on the 3 books that I was supposed to read for my like TBR jar thing. So I didn't read any of these. I started reading The Last Vampire 3 by Christopher Pike, and I got about 20 pages into it, and I just never ended up finishing it. I was really reading this when I was outside, like laying in the sun reading. But like, because you kind of have to flip over back and forth so you don't get sunburned, I didn't get a lot of reading into this because I was really only reading it when I was laying on my stomach, and then I was listening to audiobooks when I was laying the other way. So I'm going to keep reading this over the next like few months. I do hope to finish it, but I have different plans for June. So hopefully I finish it in July. I am really enjoying it, and I do really want to finish the series. And then Are You My Mother, a comic drama by Alison Bechdel. This I also did not end up finishing it because I just want to read it in a different month. I figured this is an LGBT story, so I'd like to read it during Pride Month, being June. I don't know if I'm going to finish it because I actually have a lot of books on my plate to read, but it is on my radar and I will be finishing it. And then the last book I actually ended up DNFing, and that was Certain Girls by Jennifer Weiner. So I only got about 50 pages into this or so, but I decided that I didn't care at all about the story or the characters. When I read the first book, that was about a year ago, none of it stuck with me. So when I started this book, I didn't remember anything. I kind of didn't remember who the love interest was, or that she even had a daughter. Like, none of it stuck with me at all. So I felt like to read this, I would have had to reread the first book, but I just read the first book, and I was like, this isn't the book for me. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more when I was in high school maybe, but this just isn't the story for me at the moment, and I'm too far past it to continue, so I will be unhauling this. Alright, so those are all the books that I ended up reading in the month of May, and also not reading. I've got really big plans for June. I don't know how much reading I'm actually going to get done, but I am trying to focus more on reading than I have in the last few months because I've really let it slip away from me with this whole like global pandemic thing going on. I just haven't made it a priority as much as I'd wanted to. So I've been watching a lot more TV, which is awesome because I'm finally going through some shows that I've had like on my list for literally years. But I've got 2 giant bookshelves of unread books that I really need to get to. So I do need to start making that a little bit more of a priority to kind of get through that. So I can make way for new books when I get another bookshelf, which is the last thing that I need, but it's what I want, so here we are. I will see you guys with my next video. Bye!